I'm going to compare this entry-level Porsche 911 with my top spec Porsche Cayman GTS. When I say top spec, I'm not including the GT4 because that's more of a track-orientated car. This car is September 2013 and my Porsche Cayman GTS is June 2014. So they're from a similar era, only 9 months separates them. So what's the difference between the entry-level 911 and the top spec Cayman? JR Motor Company in Coventry lent me this car. They have been looking after me. I bought my Porsche Cayman from them, and whilst it's in for some planned maintenance, they've lent me this to roll around in. Excuse how dirty it is, it's not showroom ready yet. There's little point in going through the extensive process of making it showroom ready, only for me to drive it a few hundred miles in the rain as well, and get it completely filthy again. As for price, bearing in mind this has 75,000 miles and my Cayman has 84,000 miles, this is worth about £42,000 and the Cayman's worth about £37,000. So this 911 is about £5,000 more. What about the engines? Well, they both have the same 3.4 litre 9A1 flat 6. And in this car, the engine is here with the gearbox here. Whereas in the Cayman, the engine is here with the gearbox here. So with the 911, the engine is at the back. With the 911 though, they gave the engine a bit more power. It has 350 PS and 390 Newton meters of torque. With the Cayman, same engine, but 10 less PS of power and 10 less Newton meters of torque. But acceleration is about the same. 0 to 62 in this is 4.6 seconds. In the Cayman, it's 4.8 seconds, but the Cayman GTS has launch control as standard, which drops that 4.8 to 4.6. So actually the same 0 to 62 time. Top speed of this is 178 miles an hour, but the Cayman is 175 miles an hour. So this is 3 miles an hour faster. Not that you're likely to reach that speed in many places. And they both have a 64 litre fuel tank. As for gearboxes, they are both available with this 7-speed PDK and they are both available with a manual, but with the 911 you get a 7-speed manual and with the Cayman you get a 6-speed manual. For brakes, both cars have 4-pot piston calipers at the front and the back. The 911 though has 330mm diameter discs front and back. With the Cayman it's 330mm at the front but only 299 at the back. So the Cayman has smaller rear brakes. Also on the 911, all the brakes are directionally vented, but on the Cayman, only the front is directionally vented. The rears have standard venting. So on the Cayman, the rear brakes are slightly smaller and their venting isn't quite as good. For suspension, the Cayman is strut front and back. For the 911, it's strut at the front, but multi-link at the back. That is better. Multi-link means that the tyres can maintain better contact with the road more of the time, meaning you get more out of the tyre and better tyre wear. As for wheels and tyres, the Cayman GTS as standard comes with 20-inch wheels, 235 wide at the front and 265 wide at the back. Now, although this car has these lovely Carrera Classic 20-inch wheels, they are not standard. The standard wheels on the entry-level 911 are 19-inch, 235 wide at the front, so the same width at the front, but 285 wide at the back. So they're entry-level 911. The rear wheels are 2 centimeters wider than that of the Cayman GTS from the same era. The entry-level 911 gets 4 exhaust tips, and they are real, of course, but the Porsche Cayman GTS only has 2. I'll put the dimensions for both of the cars on screen. The 911 is a bit bigger, but not by much, less than I thought. I'll illustrate. The 911 is about that much longer. It's about that much wider. Can you see that? It's not quite the thickness of my finger. And it's about that much higher, which is just over the thickness of my finger, maybe 1.5 fingers thick higher. The wheelbase is actually slightly shorter on the 911, 2.5 centimeters shorter than the Cayman, which is that much. That is the thickness of 2 fingers plus a tiny bit more. When it comes to the weight though, they are far more similar than I thought. Using the full fat weight, that includes a 68 kilo driver and 7 kilos of luggage, the 911 with PDK is 1475 kilos. The Cayman GTS with PDK is 1450 kilos. So this 911 is only 25 kilos heavier. I didn't expect that. And for the turning circle, it's 11.1 meters for the 911 and 10.98 meters for the Cayman GTS. So pretty much the same. As for luggage space, the 911 has just one boot and it's at the front. The boot size is 135 litres, which looks like this. The Cayman has a similar front boot, but 150 litres, so 15 litres more at the front in the Cayman. But the Cayman has a rear boot as well of 275 litres. So you'd think the Cayman is a more practical car, 2 boots. However, the 911 has a trick up its sleeve. If I come over here and open this door, and I lift this little thing up here and move the seat out of the way, you can see 2 rear seats. The Cayman doesn't have rear seats, it's just a 2-seater. Now that seat is in my driving position, yet there is some legroom back there behind me, but not much in the way of headroom. Also, there's space to fit things behind these seats. And if I try and hold the camera with one hand and use my other hand to fold down these seats, like so, you'll see there's extra flexibility in your storage options and some things that the previous owner has left behind. Also, there's somewhere to tie down your luggage if you want to stop it moving around. So although the Cayman has 2 boots, I have to say the 911 is a more practical sports car. Me and my partner Gosha have put the rear seats to the test. She got in the passenger seat and moved it as far forwards as she could whilst still feeling comfortable. She's 5'5", 165 centimeters. She then got in the back and she did actually fit. She wouldn't want to do a long journey, but a medium journey, half an hour, maybe an hour, fine. Also, the rear seats have ISOFIX mounting points, so I thought, let's try it with our baby seat. We have a big, bulky baby seat with a supporting leg. And moving the front passenger seat as far forwards as it will go and tilting the backrest forwards as well, I just about got it in. The baby was happy. She had as much room as she usually has, but my partner wasn't very happy. She was too far forwards and too upright. And when I was driving, I couldn't really see out the side window because Gosha was so far forwards. I could just about see the door mirror, but when I was looking left at junctions, I had to lean forwards, and even then I couldn't see much. So I had to ask her whether or not it was safe to go at junctions. Now it's my turn. So seat forwards, I think, given my experience of having a VX220, leg in, hand on, then there we go. That's not too bad. Now it's, ooh, I don't think I can actually, hang on, if I move the seatbelt out of the way, there we go, just about, but I can't lift my head and this is really not very comfortable. 10 minutes tops back here if I have to. Let's get out. Very small opening, but the trick with these difficult cars is get the leg out or in first and have something to hold. And keep your head down, because if you don't, that's going to happen. There we go. So, doable, but not by choice. If you like to go sideways on track in the wet, limited slip differentials are your friend. With the 981 Cayman, you can get a mechanical limited slip differential if it has PTV, Porsche Torque Vectoring. That's an optional extra from factory. And it's mechanical regardless of whether you have PDK or manual. With the 911, you can still have a limited slip differential, but if you have PDK, it's an electronic limited slip differential. If you want the proper mechanical one, you need to have the manual 911. However, if you get the Carrera S, which is the next up from this one, this is the entry-level 911, the Carrera S being the next up from that, it comes as standard, but it's still mechanical for the manual and electronic for the PDK. Inside up front, they are almost exactly the same. From the air vents down, they are almost identical. Doors, lower dash, center console, steering wheel, dials. The dials are a bit different. You get 2 extra dials, but the information that's available in these dials is available in the LCD screen on the Cayman. And from my driving position, I can't actually see those dials very well. I have to sort of lean to one side to try and see them because the steering wheel gets in the way. There is a difference I can find though. On the 911, we have these buttons here, but on the Cayman, these buttons are up here. So the upper dash is different, the air vents are different, but mostly this is the same car inside. The entry-level 911 gets sports seats, whereas the Cayman GTS gets hard-backed sports seats plus, which in my opinion are both more comfortable and more supportive. But you can get sports seats plus in the 911 if you pay extra. I'm now going to compare the standard equipment on this entry-level 911 with the standard equipment you get on the Cayman GTS. Firstly, this PCM with nav. So this entry-level 911 gets this navigation and stereo system standard. You have to pay extra for that on the Cayman GTS. And also you get dual zone climate control standard. You have to pay extra for that on the Cayman as well. And sound package plus, which is a 235 watt 9 speaker stereo system, which you have to pay extra for on the Cayman, but it comes standard in the 911. However, the Cayman has its own standard equipment that you have to pay extra for on the 911, and it's quite a bit more. The Cayman GTS comes with quite a lot of equipment standard. It has PASM, that's the adaptive suspension, a valved sports exhaust, it's a switchable exhaust to make it louder or quieter, sports chrono with active gearbox mounts, PDLS headlights, 20-inch wheels, sports seats plus, sports design steering wheel, that's this steering wheel, and a tyre pressure monitoring system. All those things I've just mentioned aren't standard on the 911, but they are standard on the Cayman. So the Cayman standard gets a lot more equipment than the entry-level 911. The gearing of this 7-speed PDK seems to be the same as it is in the Cayman GTS. So around about 1,000 revs equals 10 miles an hour in second gear. So the top of second gear should be about 78 miles an hour. And when I'm doing 70 miles an hour in top gear in 7th, the revs are just below 2,000. This car has a drag coefficient of 0.29, whereas the Cayman GTS, it's 0.31. What does that mean? Well, essentially it means this car slips through the air a bit more easily than the Cayman. And I do notice a difference because at motorway speeds, I find it easier to get this car to 40 miles per gallon. I can do it in the Cayman, but I have to drive more carefully. This car does seem slightly more economical at motorway speeds. And yes, this 3.4 flat 6 engine in this Porsche 911 is capable of a genuine 40 miles per gallon when driven at motorway speeds. A big difference between this 911 and the Cayman has PASM, that's the adaptive suspension. The 911, the standard suspension on the 911 seems to be softer than the PASM on the Cayman, and as a result, it's dealing with this bumpy road a whole lot better. In the Cayman on this road, I'm bouncing about all over the place, but this is a bumpy road. You can see I'm still moving around, but I feel like I have more control over this car on this road than I do in the Cayman because the suspension is more compliant. The tyres are maintaining better contact with the road more of the time. Do I notice a difference in performance between the two cars? Well, let's see. If I put it down into second, actually first, let's go. Okay, there's 60, just about 58 miles an hour. I can't tell the difference. They are both incredibly fast. Why you would need more power than this, I have no idea. There is quite a difference to the sound of this engine though. It sounds the same, but it's almost as if the engine's been put in a box and moved further away from me, and it kind of has. It's behind the gearbox, behind the rear wheels, instead of being right there like it is in the Cayman. And as a result, it's the same note, it's just quieter. It's like me going, hello, really loudly. That's the Cayman. It fills the cabin with this noise. Whereas this engine, same sound, but it's like, hello, more distant. But it's still loud. Do I notice a difference that the engine is at the rear? Let's do this bend. No. Driving at road speeds, fast road speeds, the engine being in the middle or at the back, I'm not really feeling it. I am feeling the difference in suspension. It is rolling more. The Cayman wants to turn in more. It does the bend more competently, the Cayman, but I think that's mostly suspension related. I think for me to really feel the difference between the Cayman and the 911 in terms of where the engine is placed, the difference of having the engine at the back, I'm going to need to take it on track and really push it into the corners to see what it's like at the edge of traction. But on the road, I'm not getting anywhere near the edge of traction, so I'm not feeling that difference. It just feels like a much more compliant, and I'd say easier to drive car than the Cayman, because it's smoother. It's easier on these bumpy roads. Actually, earlier I said it's still loud. I'm not so sure. Let's slow down and just check again. I think it just sounds good. It sounds the same, but I don't think it's a particularly loud car. So, on around, let's floor it. Oh no, yeah, it is pretty loud. It's much louder than your average car. It's just not as loud as the Cayman GTS, especially with the sports exhaust and its valves being open. That thing fills the cabin with noise, and if you have a sleeping passenger, well, they won't be sleeping for long. I'll just show you again. So I don't know if you can hear it on the lapel microphone. Down into first, where I can get the revs up. Yeah, loud or not, sounds good. Having two seats at the back does make me think, maybe this is more of an appropriate car for me, especially as the suspension is so much more compliant and more enjoyable on these roads. But with a baby, I don't think it's actually more practical, because yes, I can get a car seat back there, but I don't think we're going to use it if I did get it, because we still need to take our pram with us, and we've got nowhere to put the pram, and it's not really practical having the car seat back there and Gosha sitting forwards. Maybe when my baby's a bit older, maybe a toddler or able to walk, doesn't need a pram, and can sit in the rear car seat, which is not rear facing, forward facing car seat is what I'm saying, doesn't take up as much room, maybe then this car would actually make more sense. But it's thoroughly enjoyable on these roads, these bumpy British B roads. It just eats them up. I am missing the sound of the Cayman though. The Cayman's louder noise with that sound symposer. It is a bit more enjoyable, but not hugely. There's a small difference. And on that bend there, I think I went pretty fast around that bend. I don't want to go faster than that on a public road. Yeah, I'm not really feeling a difference between this rear-engined car and the mid-engined Cayman. I really would have to get it on track to see how it handles, to see the difference in handling. I think road speeds, you're probably not going to know. So second gear, let's get it to 60. Yeah, just under 6 grand actually. So I think in second gear at 7,800 revs, it may even be doing 80 miles an hour, even faster than I thought. So you can't get the top speed of this car on a British public road. At least you can't legally, which is a shame, because this car pulls strong and it really does rip up to the red line. But unfortunately, in Britain, you're not legally allowed to do that. And that's really where this engine shines. What I find odd is that this is a rear-engined car, and a mid-engined car, in theory, should be more capable. On the road, I don't think you're going to notice much of a difference, but when you're really pushing it on track, getting to the limit of traction, I would think the mid-engine car would have more potential. Yet, the 911 GT3 is placed above the Cayman GT4, so the GT3 is the more capable car. So Porsche trying to make this car, which has a bit of an Achilles heel, engine being out the back, better than the Cayman, which is actually, in theory, more suited to track driving. It's a bit odd that they do that. I don't quite understand why, but that's just how it is. This generation of Porsche 911, the 991.1, is rather special, and that's because it's the last generation to not have a turbo. After this, they all went turbo apart from the GT models. Now, some people believe these cars will hold their value in years to come as a result, and that's because the newer generations of 911 at the moment, which have turbos, are still relatively new, relatively young, and therefore relatively reliable. But as these cars get older, in another 5-10 years, maybe those newer cars will start to become less reliable as they are turbocharged, and the last generation of cars to not have turbochargers will be seen as the cheaper, more reliable cars to run. Who knows? I don't know what's going to happen in the future or how reliable those turbos will be long term. But I was told this. Someone had a 991.2, so later generation than this, with a turbo, or two turbos those cars have, and he had one turbo fail, and he couldn't just replace one, he had to replace both to keep them balanced. The bill? £12,000. I checked it out, and yes, the genuine turbos were £4,500 each, plus labour, plus VAT, 12 grand. That's enough money to compete with the old cylinder bore scoring issues that the older generations of car had, and therefore their values are low as a result. So who knows what's going to happen in the future, but in the future this may become the one to have, or the least scary one to have in terms of finances, and therefore they'll probably fetch a premium. Who knows? We will see. I've done about 200 miles in this car so far, and over 2,000 miles in the Cayman. And the best way I can compare these two cars is to say this is more of a GT car and the Cayman is more of a sports car. And I think that is the point. That's why you can get this with a roof rack and a sunroof. However, I can't say this is any less capable on the road. It's just not as sharp. And I think a lot of that is down to the suspension, but what you lose in how sharp it is, you make up for in comfort. I've just had a thought that the tyres on this 911 are quite a bit thicker than the tyres on the Cayman. That may be why this car is so much smoother on those bumpy country roads. It might be the tyres, it might be the suspension, or both, I don't know. All I do know is that this car feels smoother. Well, I've got to drive back to Coventry now to give this car back and pick up my Cayman. If you found the video interesting, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.